They don't reveal themselves when they're calm and composed. They reveal themselves in the words they throw away without thinking. The most manipulative people won't raise their voice or break character. They'll say something small. I deserve better. That's just how I am. And in that moment, their true mindset bleeds through. Stoicism teaches us that speech is the mirror of the soul, not their titles, not their charm, their words. In this video, we expose 6 phrases that seem ordinary, but quietly reveal ego, blame-shifting, emotional weakness, and hidden entitlement. Once you learn to hear them, you'll start to see people for who they really are. Friends, co-workers, even yourself. Because words don't lie, the mask does. So if you're tired of being fooled by appearances, keep watching. The final phrase, "it's not fair," may change how you see human nature forever. Like this video, subscribe for more Stoic clarity, and tap the bell. Because once you know what to listen for, you'll never hear people the same way again.
Number 1.
I deserve better. At first glance, this phrase sounds empowering. It carries the weight of self-respect. It suggests someone who knows their value. But beneath that surface, I deserve better, often isn't a declaration of strength. It's a whisper of entitlement. Entitlement disguised as confidence, and entitlement, as the Stoics knew, is one of the most subtle but corrosive forces in the soul. To say I deserve better is to place the burden of your dissatisfaction on the outside world. You shift the responsibility from yourself, your effort, your mindset, your decisions, and you place it on fate, on other people, on life itself. The world becomes the problem, not your expectations, not your actions, not your clarity. But this is where Stoic philosophy stands in direct opposition. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who could have demanded anything from anyone, wrote, "Don't waste time wondering what a good man is. Be one." He did not obsess over what others owed him. He focused instead on who he was becoming, because a Stoic doesn't demand better from life. A Stoic demands better from themselves. When people use this phrase, it's often after a disappointment, a breakup, a missed opportunity, a personal failure. And instead of reflecting inward, they lash outward. I deserve better than this job. I deserve better than how I've been treated. I deserve better friends. But rarely do they ask, am I living in a way that reflects who I want to be? That's the Stoic question. Not what you deserve, but who you're becoming. Seneca warned us of this trap when he wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." That craving, that endless reaching for what the world isn't giving you, is a poverty of spirit, because the more you feel owed, the more powerless you become. A powerful example is the story of Epictetus, born into slavery, physically abused, stripped of all status. By any standard, he had every right to say, "I deserve better," but he never did. Instead, he focused on what no one could take. His reason, his attitude, his virtue. He said, "Seek not for events to happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do, and you will find peace." That is the Stoic antidote to entitlement. Not passivity, but alignment. Not blame, but discipline. Now let's be clear. Walking away from toxic people or unjust situations is not wrong. It is wise. But the power is not in saying, "I deserve better." The power is in choosing better. From within, it's in saying, "I will no longer tolerate what weakens me, because I am strengthening myself," quiet strength over loud resentment. Even in the modern world, we see this distinction in leaders like Viktor Frankl, who, despite enduring one of the darkest chapters in human history, wrote, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." That is Stoicism in action. That is what separates the entitled from the enlightened. There's a profound difference between having standards and holding expectations. Standards are internal. They are rooted in who you choose to be. Expectations are projections, demands the world may never meet. One builds character, the other builds resentment, and resentment is a heavy chain to carry through life. So when you hear yourself thinking, I deserve better, stop, step back, ask, what can I build? Who am I becoming right now? Because the world is not waiting to reward your pain, but it is watching how you carry it. And in that, you are either growing stronger or repeating the same cycle of blame and disappointment. The Stoics didn't preach victimhood. They preached virtue, not the virtue of being treated well, but of responding well, especially when you're not. They knew that your peace cannot depend on other people doing the right thing. It must depend on you doing the right thing, regardless. In the end, your power is not found in what you claim you deserve. It's found in what you endure with grace, what you transform with clarity, and what you become without needing permission. Your life will change not when the world gives you more, but when you demand more from yourself silently every day. That's Stoic power. That's the better you're truly seeking.
Number 2.
That's just how I am. At first, this phrase sounds like self-awareness, as if the person has arrived at some hard-earned truth about their identity. But in reality, that's just how I am is rarely about insight. It's about resignation. It's a quiet surrender, a way to excuse behavior instead of improve it. And to the Stoics, that surrender is spiritual death. This phrase reveals a fixed mindset, one that no longer strives, no longer questions, no longer evolves. Instead of saying, here's what I'm working on, the person says, here's what you have to accept. But Stoicism is rooted in the opposite idea, that we are all works in progress, that virtue is not a state, it is a path. And to stop walking that path is to stop living with purpose. Marcus Aurelius, despite being emperor of Rome, never spoke as if he had arrived. His meditations read like the journal of a student, not a king. He constantly reminded himself to do better, to be better, to think better. Why? Because he knew that identity isn't a wall, it's a window. It shows you what still needs work, what still needs refinement. When someone says, that's just how I am, they are locking the door to growth. They are declaring their flaws permanent. But nothing about being human is fixed. Epictetus, born a slave and later crippled, could have said the same thing. This is just who I am. But instead, he turned inward. He refined his thoughts. He mastered his emotions. And through discipline, he became one of the most respected philosophers in history. The danger in this phrase lies in its false comfort. It gives us a place to hide, a place where we no longer have to explain ourselves, examine ourselves, or challenge ourselves. But as Seneca said, as long as you live, keep learning how to live. The learning doesn't stop when it gets uncomfortable. In fact, that's when it begins. There is a deeper kind of honesty, not the honesty that announces, this is me, take it or leave it, but the honesty that whispers, I'm still becoming, and I refuse to settle for the lesser version of myself. That kind of honesty is rare, but it is powerful because it aligns with nature, which is always changing, adapting, and moving forward. And that's the Stoic ideal, not to be unchanging, but to be unshakable in your commitment to grow. People often confuse stability with stubbornness, but real strength is flexible. It adapts, it evolves. Just like a tree must bend with the wind or risk being broken, a wise person evolves with truth or becomes trapped in their own illusion. We see this lesson in the life of Nelson Mandela. After decades in prison, he did not emerge bitter, fixed in identity. He emerged transformed. He didn't say, this is who I am, take it or leave it. He said, I've reflected, I've changed, and I will lead with grace. That's not weakness, that's mastery. In relationships, this phrase is often used to escape accountability. I'm not affectionate. That's just how I am. I get angry sometimes. That's just how I am. But behind these excuses is a refusal to develop emotional discipline. And as Epictetus warned, no man is free who is not master of himself. To master yourself, you must first refuse to excuse yourself. So, what's the alternative? Instead of saying, that's just how I am, try asking, is this the best I can be? That question opens the door to transformation. It turns conflict into clarity, weakness into will, and stagnation into self-respect. The Stoic path is not about perfection, it's about persistence. The truth is, we're all unfinished, and that's not shameful. It's sacred. The Stoics weren't perfect, but they were committed to waking up each day and choosing virtue again, choosing clarity again, choosing the harder path again. If you want to honor who you are, don't freeze your identity in stone. Shape it like clay, refine it like iron, test it like gold, because that's where meaning lives. Not in what you've been, but in what you're willing to become. That's just how I am is the anthem of the stuck. But I can be more is the battle cry of the free. And that's the sound of someone walking the Stoic path.
Number 3.
I don't care. Few phrases are more deceptive than this one. On the surface, it sounds cold, detached, in control, as if the speaker has mastered the art of not being shaken. But beneath the surface, I don't care, is rarely a sign of true emotional strength. More often, it's a mask, a shield worn by someone who's been hurt, disappointed, or overwhelmed. A person who once cared deeply and now tries to escape that vulnerability by pretending to care not at all. But here's the truth. Indifference is not resilience. The Stoics never preached apathy, they preached control. And there's a profound difference to feel nothing is not power, to feel everything, and still respond with clarity, with principle, with discipline. That's Stoicism. When someone says, I don't care, it usually means one of two things. Either they are running from pain, distancing themselves from what once mattered because it's safer to feel nothing than to feel again. Or they are using apathy as armor, a way to seem untouchable, superior, above the struggle. But both are rooted in fear, and fear, when disguised as indifference, doesn't protect us, it isolates us. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That quote doesn't encourage detachment from emotion. It urges mastery over our reactions to it. The Stoic doesn't say, I don't care. He says, I choose how I respond to what I care about. Because caring is not the weakness. Being owned by what you care about, that's the trap. The goal isn't to harden the heart. The goal is to strengthen the mind. Seneca once observed, a gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. That friction comes from caring, from engaging, from choosing to show up, even when it's uncomfortable. There's a dangerous kind of detachment that masquerades as wisdom, but it's really emotional cowardice. It's the fear of being seen trying, the fear of failing, the fear of caring too much and being disappointed. I don't care becomes the story we tell to escape the deeper truth, that we care, but we no longer believe we're strong enough to handle what comes next. Epictetus would have called that a misunderstanding of nature. He reminded his students that we are not disturbed by events, but by our interpretation of them. To care is human, to suffer unnecessarily is optional. We see this principle clearly in the life of Maya Angelou. Betrayed, silenced, humiliated. She had every reason to say, I don't care, but she didn't. Instead, she transformed her pain into poetry, her silence into voice, her story into strength. That's not apathy, that's power, that's Stoic alchemy in motion. Taking what wounds you and forging it into wisdom. Likewise, modern figures like David Goggins echo this mindset. Known for his extreme endurance and mental toughness, Goggins doesn't hide behind indifference. He admits his pain, he owns his past, but he channels it into something productive. Discipline, mastery, momentum. He doesn't run from emotion, he races through it, fueled by it. And this brings us to a crucial turning point. Apathy kills connection. The more you say, "I don't care," the more you detach not just from others, but from yourself, from purpose, from meaning. It is not strength to stop caring. It is strength to continue caring without losing your center. So when you hear yourself saying, "I don't care," stop, ask yourself, is that true, or are you just tired? Are you protecting your peace, or are you avoiding your responsibility to feel, to show up, to stay engaged with life? Because indifference is not peace. Real peace is the ability to stay open without falling apart. It's the strength to care deeply without losing yourself. It's the wisdom to say, "I feel this, I value this, but I won't be ruled by it." The Stoics never said, "Be numb." They said, "Be anchored, be deliberate, be responsible for your inner world." That's where freedom begins. Not in avoidance, but in mastery. "I don't care" is the language of someone trying to outrun meaning, but the one who stands still, feels fully, and still chooses the path of discipline. That's the one who becomes untouchable. In the end, emotional indifference is not evolution, it's escape. True evolution is feeling everything and choosing not to be broken by it. The Stoic doesn't deny life, he meets it fully and remains unmoved. And that's what it means to walk the Stoic path.
Number 4.
That's not my fault. This phrase might be the most instinctive defense mechanism in the human mind. When something goes wrong, our ego rushes to shield us. That wasn't me. That wasn't my responsibility. And while it may feel like protection, this mindset quietly destroys accountability, character, and growth. The Stoics taught that while we may not control every event, we are always responsible for how we interpret and respond to it. So when someone says, "That's not my fault," what they're really doing is refusing the very thing that builds character. Ownership, not of everything, but of what they can influence, especially their response. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "If it is endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining." That's not a call to accept blame for what others have done. It's a call to stop seeking escape and blame and start seeking clarity and responsibility. Even when something isn't your fault, how you carry it still reflects your strength. In daily life, we often see this phrase weaponized. In workplaces, in families, and friendships, people dodge blame because they think accountability equals weakness. But Stoicism flips that idea. To a Stoic, admitting fault is not weakness, it's power. It's the moment when your ego kneels before your integrity. Consider Eleanor Roosevelt. When criticized for her political independence as First Lady, she never said, "That's not my fault." She stood with calm resolve. Her quote, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent," wasn't just clever, it was stoic. She refused to outsource her strength. The phrase, "That's not my fault," also reveals fear. Fear of being wrong, of being held responsible, of facing reality. But Stoicism teaches that truth is your ally, especially when it stings. As Seneca said, "He who is brave is free," and there is no braver act than saying, "I played a part in this. Now I choose to grow." There's a subtle difference between blame and responsibility. Blame looks backward, responsibility looks forward. Blame is obsessed with guilt. Responsibility is obsessed with growth. One traps you, the other frees you. And the person who clings to, "That's not my fault," often clings to a self they fear evolving beyond. Of course, Stoicism doesn't ask you to take on guilt that isn't yours. There are moments where boundaries must be honored and blame rightfully rejected. But what Stoicism does demand is radical responsibility for your inner life, for your thoughts, your actions, your next decision. That's where sovereignty begins, not in blame, but in self-mastery. Epictetus, who suffered deeply in both body and circumstance, still taught that freedom doesn't come from blaming the world, but from mastering the self. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. That's not passive surrender. That's the ultimate power move. In relationships, this mindset is essential. When conflict arises, it's easy to say, "That's your fault." It's harder to ask, "Where did I fail to listen?" That question demands humility, but it builds trust, and trust outlasts the satisfaction of being right. We see this in Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers. He never blamed or deflected. When faced with challenge, he asked what he could do better, how he could stay kind. He wasn't passive, he was principled, and through quiet ownership, he became a moral anchor for millions. One modern voice that echoes this is Jocko Willink. His philosophy, extreme ownership, doesn't mean taking blame for everything, but owning everything you touch. Even if something wasn't fully your fault, his teaching is simple. Ask, what part did I play and how can I improve? That mindset doesn't weaken you, it sharpens you, because now progress is always yours to claim. So the next time you feel the urge to say, "That's not my fault," pause, breathe, ask instead, "What can I own here?" Because that question doesn't trap you, it frees you. It shifts the focus from ego to evolution, from self-protection to self-respect. The Stoics weren't interested in who started the fire. They cared about who had the courage to walk through it, learn from it, and never be burned the same way again. And that's what it means to walk the Stoic path.
Number 5.
I was just being honest. This phrase often arrives right after a verbal blow has landed. Someone says something cruel, sharp, unnecessary, and when called out, they retreat behind a convenient shield. I was just being honest. But honesty without wisdom is brutality, and the Stoics would be the first to reject the idea that truth must come at the cost of virtue. Honesty is a virtue in Stoic philosophy, but like all virtues, it must be guided by reason, intention, and integrity. Seneca wrote, "Nothing is more honorable than a grateful heart, and nothing is more dishonorable than using truth as a weapon." When someone says, "I was just being honest," what they often mean is, "I needed to feel powerful, and I used truth to dominate, not enlighten." There's a difference between being truthful and being virtuous. The first says what is. The second asks, what is necessary? What is helpful? What is kind? Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Does what I'm about to say improve the silence?" That question isn't about self-censorship. It's about wisdom. It's about knowing that words carry weight, and that throwing truth without care is no better than throwing stones. Often people who use this phrase aren't committed to growth. They're committed to being right, to winning the moment, to protecting their ego. But the Stoic is not interested in momentary victories. The Stoic is interested in harmony, inner and outer. Words are not tools to control others. They are instruments to clarify thought and express virtue. If your honesty leaves others wounded and yourself elevated, that's not clarity, that's ego. Consider the example of Maya Angelou. She spoke truth, but she did so with rhythm, with grace, with an unwavering respect for the power of language. She understood that honesty isn't just about content, it's about delivery. It's about whether your words create light or merely heat. And the Stoic aims always for light. "I was just being honest" is often code for, "I didn't want to regulate my emotions, so I called my outbursts the truth." But Stoicism is about regulation, about discipline, about aligning speech with reason. Epictetus warned that we must not speak carelessly, that our words, like our actions, must serve our higher purpose, not our passing emotions. There's also the illusion that honesty gives us a license to judge. But the Stoic does not chase the role of the critic. He seeks to be the physician, not to diagnose for sport, but to heal when called. And healing requires timing. It requires compassion. It requires the courage to speak when necessary, and the wisdom to stay silent when not. We see this clearly in the example of Fred Rogers. He never avoided the truth, but he delivered it gently, calmly, lovingly. His honesty wasn't a sword, it was a bridge, a way to connect, not cut. And through that kind of honesty, he became trusted, because he knew that truth without love is noise. Now, this doesn't mean we silence ourselves to avoid discomfort. The Stoic still tells the truth. But not every truth needs to be spoken. Not every moment is right, and not every listener is ready. The wise man does not shout into a storm. He waits, he watches, he chooses his words the way a craftsman chooses his tools. So the next time you're tempted to say, "I was just being honest," stop, ask, was I being helpful? Was I being fair? Was I being wise? Because honesty that lacks those qualities is not stoic, it's selfish. And if you're on the receiving end of such a phrase, remember this. You do not have to accept truth delivered without care. You have the right to demand higher standards, not just in what people say, but in how they say it, because tone reveals intention, and intention reveals character. The Stoics believed that self-control was the root of all greatness, and nowhere is that more visible than in how we speak. Your words either bring peace or they bring pain. One reveals mastery, the other exposes immaturity. In the end, "I was just being honest" is a phrase used to escape accountability for harm. But true Stoic honesty embraces accountability. It takes responsibility for the ripple effects of every word. It doesn't settle for being right. It aims to be righteous. And that's what it means to walk the Stoic path. Number 6, it's not fair. This phrase is often spoken with a clenched jaw, a heavy heart, and eyes full of resentment. It's the cry of someone who's been overlooked, mistreated, misunderstood, and on the surface it seems justified. After all, life can be cruel, people betray, opportunities slip away. The world doesn't always reward the worthy, but from a Stoic perspective, this phrase doesn't represent clarity, it represents captivity. When we say it's not fair, we aren't just pointing to injustice. We are also, often unknowingly, giving our power away. Because behind those 3 words hides a deeper belief that life owes us something, that there is some external force responsible for how we feel, and that, to the Stoics, is a dangerous illusion. Marcus Aurelius never said, "This shouldn't have happened to me." Instead, he wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." He understood that fairness is not guaranteed, but growth is always available. And the wise do not wait for life to balance the scales. They learn to walk steady on uneven ground. When someone says, "It's not fair," they're often grieving the loss of control. The job they deserved went to someone else. The love they gave wasn't returned. The effort they made went unnoticed. And so they look at life with bitterness, expecting the universe to issue a refund. But Stoicism teaches a harder truth. Life is not a transaction, it's a training ground. Seneca wrote, "What need is there to weep over parts of life? The whole of it calls for tears." He didn't say that to depress you. He said it to awaken you, to remind you that unfairness is part of the terrain. Expecting fairness from life is like expecting the sea to be calm just because you're a good swimmer. The Stoic doesn't curse the waves, he trains his breath. Consider Oprah Winfrey, abused as a child, marginalized as a young woman, doubted by almost everyone early in her career. She could have said, "It's not fair," and stopped. Instead, she said, "What can I do with this pain?" She turned it into fuel. She turned it into voice. She turned it into power. That's Stoicism in action, even if she never used the word. It's not fair. often signals a stuckness in the soul, a refusal to move forward until the world sets things right. But what if that moment never comes? What if fairness, as you imagine it, is a horizon you never reach? Do you keep standing still, waiting, or do you decide to walk anyway? Epictetus was born into slavery. He didn't waste time crying, "It's not fair." He studied, he learned, he practiced, and in the end, he taught others how to be free, because he freed himself first, not from chains, but from the need for fairness, from the need to be rescued, from the fantasy that life should be smooth in order for him to be strong. So how do we respond when we're wronged? Not by pretending it didn't happen, but by choosing what happens next, by saying, "This hurt, but it doesn't own me. This is heavy, but I still choose to carry myself with dignity." The Stoic accepts that life isn't fair, so they stop demanding it and start transforming it. We also have to look inward. Sometimes "it's not fair" is code for "I don't want to try again." It's a smokescreen for fear, for exhaustion, for the pain of effort that didn't pay off. But Stoicism doesn't coddle our emotions. It teaches us to examine them, to ask him, am I grieving or am I hiding? Am I seeking justice or avoiding growth? There's a better phrase than "it's not fair." It's this: it is what it is. Now, what will I do with it? That's the beginning of inner power. That's the moment you stop waiting and start walking, because the world may never be fair, but you can always be fierce. So the next time you hear yourself whisper, "It's not fair," take a breath, look closer, and then do something radically stoic. Refuse to be reduced by what happened. Let it deepen you. Let it shape you. Let it harden your clarity, not your heart. Stoics didn't chase fairness. They chased virtue, and in that pursuit, they found something more powerful than fairness: peace. And that's what it means to walk the Stoic path. So now you've heard them, 6 simple phrases that reveal the deeper architecture of a person's soul, not through their intentions, but through their defaults, their reflexes, their patterns when life squeezes tight. And maybe, just maybe, you've seen yourself in a few of these. That's not a reason for shame. It's a reason for awakening. Because the Stoic path isn't about perfection. It's about precision, about catching the moment when ego wants to speak and choosing clarity instead, when blame wants to rise, and choosing ownership, when pain tempts you to shout, and choosing silence with strength. If this video challenged you, stay with it. Watch it again, reflect, apply, and when you hear someone say one of these 6 phrases, don't judge, observe, then decide what kind of presence you want to be in that room. If you found value here, like and subscribe. This isn't just philosophy, it's a practice, a discipline, a way of living clear, no matter what comes.